Well, today we're going to be talking through one of the most profound chapters in the whole Bible, Romans chapter 8. It's the big conclusion to everything that Paul's been talking about so far. Everything's been leading up to this chapter. So let's do a quick 1-minute review of where we've been. In chapter 1, the heathens are completely lost. In chapter 2, the religious people and the Jews with their law of God, they're completely lost too. Because neither the heathens, nor the moral people, nor the Hebrews can do all that stuff that they know is right. They're all guilty before God. In chapter 3, we have that famous turning point. But now, a righteousness apart from the law is revealed, and God says, hey, all of you guys down there, you can't justify yourself. And actually, you don't even come close. So I am going to do it for you. And in chapter 4, Paul shows that this is not some new doctrine. It's always been this way. God has always been doing it this way. And he gives examples out of the life of Abraham and out of the life of David. In chapter 5, we learn that amazing principle of federal headship, that because of one man, sin entered the world and everything was ruined, but also because of one man, everything was put right again. That's the power of one. And in chapter 6, we read about how we're no longer under the authority of that old tyrant, sin. Sin no longer has any dominion over you. And then in chapter 7, Paul talked about what it was like trying to live under the law and how crushing that is and how impossible that is. And he said that there is only one way out, and that's that we actually had to die to the law so that we could remarry somebody else. And of course, he's talking about Jesus. Now we get to chapter 8. And it's like Paul rolls up his sleeves and says, now, here's the big conclusion to all of this. Because of everything we've been talking about before, he says, there is, therefore, now no condemnation to those who are in Christ Jesus. Let that sink in. Do you know what that really means? It means that no matter where you came from, no matter how many people that you hurt, no matter how many mistakes you made, mistakes with your kids, mistakes in your marriage, no matter how bad you got it wrong in your life, or no matter how much destruction that you created along the way, there is, therefore, now no condemnation for you. There's no guilt about it. There's no record of it as far as God's concerned. It's completely gone. And that weight of what you should have done, or what you should have been, but you weren't, or what you shouldn't have done, but you did, and maybe you regret it so much, the weight of that relentless law on your shoulders, that weight, it's been lifted. Why? Well, because I died to the law and all its expectations of me, and I've been remarried to another. You know what that makes me? Man, it makes me free. And that's exactly what Paul says next in verse 2. He says, for the law of the Spirit of life in Christ Jesus has made me free from the law of sin and death. The reign of sin, the reign of the law over you, it's over. Well, you might say, that sounds nice to say, but sometimes I don't feel so free. I've got some stuff still hanging on to me. And that's an experience that we all have sometimes. But let me just say this to you, just to remind you that we don't walk by our feelings. Feelings lie. Do you know that you can feel something that's not really true? There's a really interesting phenomenon called phantom limbs. And it's when people get their limbs amputated, like an arm or a leg, but they can still feel that limb. Sometimes it can actually start itching. And they have an unbelievable urge to reach down and scratch it, but it's not there. Feelings can deceive you. And it's just like that. The truth is that there was a time when I was under condemnation, but I am not in that place anymore. So what do you do when you start to feel those old feelings? Remember who you are. Remember all the things that God has done for you. Meditate in it day and night. Recite it to yourself. Memorize it. Meditate on it. Verse 3, Paul continues, "For what the law could not do, in that it was weak through the flesh." Remember, the law was good, but I was the weak link here. The law could not help me be righteous, but God Himself did it. What the law could not do, God did by sending His own Son in the likeness of sinful flesh. On account of sin, He condemned sin in the flesh. That is, He condemned my sin in His flesh. Remember the principle of substitution, that the righteous requirement of the law might be fulfilled in us, who do not walk according to the flesh, but according to the Spirit. Now, notice here that Paul is making a contrast between flesh and spirit. Everybody you know is either in the flesh or in the Spirit. There's no in between. It's kind of like Noah in the ark. You are either in the ark or you weren't in the ark. There's no almost in the ark. You're either in or you're out. So everybody you know is either in the flesh or in the Spirit. Now, if you're saved, you are in the Spirit 100% of the time. You don't go in and out of the ark, and you don't go in and out of Christ. Either you belong to Christ or you don't. Now, we don't always act like we're in the Spirit, do we? We still have a lot of work that needs to be done because we are being rehabilitated out of that old mindset of sin and bondage. Those phantom feelings that make us feel dominated by sin. We're still in the process. We're still renewing our mind. But the truth is, and it's a positional truth, it's a spiritual truth, I am not in the flesh anymore. I've been taken out of that, and now I'm in the Spirit. Now we just have to start acting like it. Be who you already are. You're free. Now start acting like you're free. You're in the Spirit. Now start walking in the Spirit. Be who you are. Well, that's the end of verse 4, and we're going to pick it up in verse 5 next time. Got a lot of amazing truths coming up, and so we'll start getting into it next time. See you then.